Wednesday morning. I'm thinking we're still here from Tuesday night. November 13th, 2019 meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Byrne? Present. Mr. Lear? Present. Mr. Legess? Mr. Snipes? Ms. Dunbar? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Carrico? Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Smith? Ms. Zucolo? Mr. Long? Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
I have not received anything for public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Any public comment at this time? Okay, go on to approval of minutes from October 9th, 2019. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Byrne. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Chief Judge, I do not see him here. Next up is the Circuit Clerk's Office, Ms. Cianci. In your package, you have a copy of the reports for the monthly report, and that I'll take a motion to approve by Mr. Byrne, second by Mr. Lear. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'm going to read this. It says, Roger, I apologize for not being able to attend the Criminal Justice Committee again this month. Timing hasn't been very good to me lately. If you would please relay to the committee, I want to thank everyone for their sympathies expressed last month when my mom passed away. It was very much appreciated by my family and myself, and that's from Sandy. State's Attorney, Mr. Rowe. In your package, you have a copy of the Grand Jury Monthly Report and the Grand Jury Statistic Report for October of 2019. Take a motion to approve by Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Byrne. Comments on your report, Jim?
You can see we're up to 811. We had 48
Microphone,
bills.
please.
Sorry, we had 48 true bills returned at the last grand jury. As you know, we do grand jury every other week. I think we've got 3 left this month. We are putting. Mr. Latham was just telling me that we've been there late for grand jury the last couple times. We start at 1. Grand jury's going till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock some days because we are putting 60 cases on every grand jury. That's the most I can possibly put on there without just burning out the jurors. And we still have a lot kind of sitting in the queue waiting to go. So now we're working on prioritizing those cases. Of course, murders. And then felony domestics take the highest priority in our office. Sex cases, of course. But when we start to get into some of the nonviolent felony offenders, if they don't make it on the second one, we're running into a situation where we're going to have to start doing preliminary hearings in the courtrooms, which could require its completely separate and own court call. So stuff is backing up pretty rapidly as far as felony offenses and getting them to grand jury. So this number it's a high. I mean, 811, that's a lot of cases. That's more than we did many years, and I'm still thinking it's going to be somewhere between 900 to 1,000 by year's end. That impacts the public defender's office, the circuit clerk's office, probation department, all law enforcement agencies, because they have to come and testify at grand jury. They have to testify at a preliminary hearing. So it's the workload is certainly there for all offices and everyone involved. You can see domestics are still second highest felony that we file. Those numbers every month, we've got more going on the docket. So we've got to do better as a community to reduce domestic violence in our neighborhoods, and I think that starts by supporting Harbor House. I want to thank people that supported Harbor House during Domestic Violence Month, but we all know it's a problem year-round. So please, anything you can do for Harbor House at any time of the year, it would be welcome. And they do have a lady, she may have already given birth to the child, or it may be coming soon. So if you're able to donate anything to Harbor House for a newborn, that would be much appreciated. Did they accept the report? Did they vote on the report?
Yes.
All right. One other thing, you may have seen in the news.
No, they haven't.
They haven't. If you want to do that, I'm done with the report.
You're done with it, okay. We have a motion and a second for the reports. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
One last thing, we got a pretty significant grant from the United States Department of Justice. We applied with School District 111. It brings mental health training to every staff member, and that's, you know, your school bus driver, your teachers, your principals, admin staff, everyone in the building, so that they can identify when a student's going through a mental health crisis and how to respond to it. It also provides that training to every student in the building, so that they can know what signs to watch for among their fellow classmates, as well as violence de-escalation. So if a student hears that something's going to happen, or maybe sees something on social media, we're teaching the students what to do and giving them options to report it anonymously, even whether through an app, a website, a hotline, just any way we can to reduce violence in the schools and avert some type of very serious mental health crisis. That is going to, for year one of the grant, it's a 3-year grant. It's almost, I think, $300,000 or close to it. For the first year, it's just District 111 schools while it's rolled out, but in years 2 and 3, it'll be in every school in the county. So we're really, really hopeful that this we can make some strides in keeping the violence down in the schools. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Rowe?
Get out of here before he gets here.
Thank you, Jim. Next up, Public Defender, Mr. Pentwick. In your package, you have a copy of his report from September and also a copy of his report from October. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Mr. Carrico. Good morning, Ed. Comments on your reports?
Basically, we're up to date for the first time in a while. We got the October dates, September report. We've broken down, or I've broken down, the delinquency cases versus the abuse and neglect cases. There's 2 types of juvenile cases. One are delinquency, which is a regular criminal call, and then the abuse and neglect or the other matters regarding DCFS. That way, you can't just lump juvenile together in one thing and say it's the same. I think one of the biggest takeaways is the fact that we are taking on more cases than we're resolving. That's obviously something that is incumbent upon me to talk to my staff about and get that going. I received a jail sheet from Lieutenant Schultz regarding length of custody. I think our longest custody defendant, is 2,864 days. That's about a month-old data. That case is on a sentencing track, so it should be resolved very soon. I would represent that not the average, but there are a lot of people there with 800 days in jail, 900 days in jail, 1,000 days in jail. It's terrible. It's terrible for the defendant, for the client. It's terrible for the jail. It's terrible for the state's attorney's office. And that's something that's going to be looked into in the upcoming months. Other than that, Kirsten Steves is resigning as of January 3rd. With the help of the county, there's an additional $20,000. I'm going to create a full-time position out of her position. Ultimately, I think she was getting paid I can't remember what she's getting paid. I think $33,000 or $34,000. We're going to create a full-time position, which is actually going to save the county a net gain money because the starting salary of the new employee is going to be $53,000. So it's actually going to be less than what it would be if we had 2 part-time employees. And as I stated previously, it's my firm belief that one full-time person is much more productive than 2 part-timers. So that's going to be a huge benefit for the county, I believe. Thank Mr. Hess for the kind words yesterday. It was well spoken. I appreciate that, and that's pretty much all I have.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anything else for the committee?
I have nothing.
Any questions for Mr. Penalty? Chairman Wheeler?
Yes. Yeah, your husband probably has issues with that. Probably not. So I just wanted to mention the part that Ed didn't kind of cover is that when he does lose his next part-timer, that will go unreplaced, and then we're back on the schedule to replace 2 part-timers with a full-timer. So that was part of this agreement grab what you can right now. We needed that full-timer. As Mr. Rowe said, we've got to get things through the courts, and so the agreement was, do this now, but the next time somebody leaves as a part-timer, don't replace him. So
Correct.
And he suggested that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the probation, Mr. Latham. In your package, you have a copy of his monthly report. Take a motion to approve. Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Eckhoff. Morning, Tom. Comments on your report, sir?
No, not too much. You can see we had a little over 25,000 successful contacts year to date, 3,100 drug tests, and 8 juveniles currently in custody at River Valley Detention Center. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Questions or comments for Mr. Latham? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Real quick, the one other thing I have is that we received some good news, additional good news from the state. As you know, our salary subsidy was increased for this year by about over $330,000. Plus, we got another $200,000 for some additional staff for pretrial. And then we received, I think it was 2 weeks ago, word that we will receive another $140,000. We had 2 positions in our Kankakee office that were salary subsidy. They received $1,000 a month, so $12,000 a year for that position. We reached out to AOIC because they had some money available and said, could we move those into grant and aid, which are fully funded positions? So they agreed, and those were 2 of our higher positions. So that upped our salary reimbursement of $140,000 and making us truly fully funded for the first time in my 25 plus years there. So it was a good thing. So that's it.
Chairman Wheeler.
Tom, are you able to, or prepared to talk about the GPS thing that we talked about, or is that something you'd rather save to another meeting?
No, we could talk about it.
Yeah, if you want to explain to the committee what we briefly talked about.
We just I had some couple conversations with Chief Cosman of the City Police Department, and obviously they're having a lot of issues with what's going on in the city. And we have some juveniles that are on home detention that are possibly involved in these incidents. They reached out about us putting juveniles on GPS monitoring, which we have in the past. But we do it for adults, but the adults are self-pay. So the issue with juveniles was the judge, they're not going to be self-pay. We'd have to pay for it. $8 a day, $56 a week. You know, I believe this would be a very effective tool. Obviously, we check on those individuals day and night and on weekends, but there's gaps in there in the monitoring. So I think it would be very effective to do this, but it would be a cost of, to do it. And that's what
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, why can't the parents pay for it? Hold the parents accountable. If they're children,
I
why
agree.
should it cost us, the taxpayers, when juveniles are running wild and their parents? It's not the job of the parent.
Mr. Rowe.
One of the issues with that is, when it's an adult, the option is either he remains in custody or he's released with the GPS. So there's an incentive there for him to pay. With juveniles, we don't really have that option. The option isn't going to be detention or GPS. It's going to be home detention without GPS or home detention with GPS. So if they're not able to pay, the judge is going to put them on home detention, and they're on home detention now. But of course, juvenile probation can't be there 24/7. So unfortunately, it's a cost we're going to have to incur. I think some of the numbers we looked at, maybe 5 kids, maybe 10 even at the very most. So it's not an excessive cost. We do have some funding to assist with that. But yeah, it'd be great if the parents could pay. If they're in a position to pay, maybe the court would order that either on the front end or when the case is finally disposed of. But right now, the choices we have are either home detention without GPS or home detention with GPS. And with the shootings in the city, I think we've got to do what we have to do as far as getting these kids on GPS so we know where they're at all times. It's just a bad situation.
Mr. Wheeler?
The part that I kind of, it seems logical to me that if the state's attorney or the arresting agency were to say to the judge in court, we would prefer to have GPS monitoring on this situation for the juvenile, that's something that I think I would look for, and I don't know if you agree with that statement, because then they're basically saying we're committed to either assisting in this or helping fund this. as Mr. Rose said, he may have some resources to put towards that. I think it's part of our responsibility, but that's why I thought it'd be a good idea to bring it up and let people think about it, and maybe come back next month and say, is this something we want to move on, with more of a better plan idea how this would work if we can get together kind of offline and talk about the mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is, we talk about the incidents going on in the city right now, the shootings and stuff. This is only effective if they're in the system with us already. So if individuals are involved in this, what's going on, are not pending with us, then we have no way of putting them on GPS. So it's not gonna
Right.
100% of the situation, but I think, it would go a long way in helping. I mean, we could track them. We can, there's active systems, there's passive systems. If they left their residence or a certain zone, it would alert us right away, alert CANCOM. There's other passive systems where we get there in the morning and we check, like we do with the adults, and see where they went and how long they were there, and we can track them all, everywhere they went. So and they're both the same price. There's options there, but it's just, as we figured out, about $10,000 a year would be roughly, the cost of.
That's 5 kids if they were on it all year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my question would be, would the committee want to see a full-blown proposal come back next month? That's kind of.
What's the committee's pleasure? Mr. Snipes?
Of course, but I do have to make a statement. If you look at the cost of building a detention center, you'll find out, was that $90 a day or more? You're talking 8. And working in the school system for the 25 years, I will tell you this: they don't believe nothing can happen to them. They know if you arrest them that you got to release them to a parent, and we know what that's going to do. Most parents have to work. The other parents that don't work kind of need parenting skills because they're trying to be friends to their kids. This is the reality. So when you look at the fact that they don't think nothing can happen to them, they get away. When we take the lead and let them know that there's a consequence for their action, I think you'll curtail a lot of this stuff. Most, let me say, the adults run their criminal activity through the youth because they know they're less vulnerable to detention. So I agree, for the small cost of 8, we need to look at it. I do also agree with Willie that we need to have some type of numbers before us, so that way we can make a more intelligent decision and make sure it's cost effective as far as that's concerned. But I do believe that is a step in the right direction. We cannot let these individuals continue to go and think nothing is going to happen to them.
Thank you.
And to that point, though, I think it's a great tool, and I know Jim and I have talked about this, but the next step, what if they violate that? You have to be ready for that step, because, super duper GPS monitoring doesn't, you have to be able to, have something behind it. Or we just kind of, are doing the same thing, spinning our wheels. But
Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are the consequences if they violate that?
Well, obviously, they should be taken back into custody, but then we start the same process. How long do we keep them there? How long are they going to stay in custody? And that's what adults, it's a little easier with that. You're back in jail, but the juveniles, it's a little different. They're really not wanting to keep them in custody like they do adults. So.
If the GPS would show that they were at the scene of a shooting, would that make any difference on Mr.
It would show that, obviously, that they violated the home detention, but as far as proving that they were involved in the shooting, we'd need more than just showing that they're in the area.
I didn't say involved. I
Yeah.
just said if it showed that they
Yeah,
were at the scene.
I would hope that information like that would encourage a judge to maybe, take them back into custody, detain them. Yeah, the problem is, even when they're convicted of crimes, serious offenses, in my opinion, what are they looking at in IDJJ? 120 days, 180 days, maybe?
Maybe.
At the most?
And
So-
first-time offenders,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, even less likely
Yeah.
that they're going to do any significant time.
What's-
No, but it's a great tool to use, and I think it'd be very helpful. Would juveniles on GPS still do? It's beyond stupid when we can simply track them,
Yeah.
but it's possible. But I do think it's very effective, because like I said, those guys are out checking on them, working with local police, checking on these juveniles all the time, but there's gaps in that. And even with GPS, you still need people checking on them, because there's other compliance issues that we're checking. So, but it would be very, very helpful.
Mr. Smith?
In listening to Mr. Wheeler, listening to you, Tom, why are we going to study a problem you already know what's going on at $56 a week times 5? Do it. I don't know if that takes a motion to do or whatever, but
Well, it's not on the agenda. We would have to bring it back with statistics for next month.
does he actually, does probation actually have to have our permission to do this? It's one of their,
Oh, microphone, please.
I mean, Mr. Wheeler would know, but I would think that there'd have to be some sort of either appropriation or amendment to the budget to give you the funding to do that. If we're looking at $3,000 a year times potentially 10 kids, $30,000 at most, I would think. I don't know that you have that extra money in your budget,
Absolutely not.
so it would take some sort of amendment or appropriation.
Okay, why don't we have him bring back some numbers for the next month? This committee can go ahead and approve it, then refer it to finance. So that means we're talking at this, you're gonna be January before this actually gets through. Correct, Mr. Wheeler? Yeah. So if you would.
So
throw s-
numbers, is how many hours of GPS we're looking at? That kind of,
Like your worst case scenario.
okay.
What you think is like the max that you. Excuse me, the maximum you think you, like Jim mentioned, 10, per day for the year, 30 grand. If that was the number, then basically what you base that on. And frankly, if you wanted to have it together and just go right to finance with it this month, I mean, then it'll
That's
shave
it.
a month off of
It's
this.
done. I have it back in my office.
So if you get the head nod here, we can send it to, it's not a vote because it's not on the agenda, but then we could take it to finance this month.
Okay.
Does that make-
Discussion on that, go directly to finance, forego this committee. I'm seeing everybody shaking heads, so if you do that for
Not a problem.
finance
Yes.
on the,
We'd also just make sure that, obviously, you guys are gonna talk and figure out how the mechanisms are and how that works with the local jurisdictions and things like that.
That's not a problem.
for the 27th of this month, then it'd go to finance. So any members of the committee that's not on finance, if you want to attend that would be a good thing.
Okay, not a problem.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Latham?
Lastly, we had our drug court auction, annual drug court auction on October 29th. I don't have the numbers yet, but it went very well. We don't have all the numbers, I should say, but it was a very well-attended event, and I appreciate everybody. A lot of people here were there or donated money, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully next month I should have what they cleared. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Next up, Sheriff. In your packet, and it should have been electronically sent to you, you have the sheriff's monthly report. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Ms. Parker. Comments on your report, Sheriff?
Not really. Everybody got an electronic copy except Mr. Long,
Yeah.
but I just provided him a paper copy, so there's really nothing out of the ordinary on this month. Things are still, our local numbers still high, our out-of-county numbers staying consistent. Our transports are fairly steady, and our fatals continue to rise. So that is about it.
Questions, comments for the sheriff on the report? I highlighted the 7 and 92 again this month. Sent to prison and released.
Yep.
That's unreal. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. State.
Yeah,
State of the Sheriff's Office.
so that presentation, the presentation, it's the State of the County breakfast. which I plan to show this committee. Actually, I thought about it further and figured I'd wait till the end of the year so the numbers would be accurate instead of estimates. So, and after last night, I'm sure everybody's tired of the state of the county stuff. So, we'll just wait till next month to do that.
Any questions or comments for the sheriff? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Gessner, the coroner's office. In your packet, you have a copy of his monthly report and a copy of the monthly receipts of money. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Byrne. Morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Comments on your report?
Basically, don't have a lot of comments other than we had a busy month in October. Autopsies are up a little bit. As you go down that, I'm looking at this particular list right here. You look down on there, you can see that our suicides are basically up from up last year, and then moving on down, and also in the vehicle accidents, our fatalities are up there quite a bit from last year. Other than that, we're still holding at 27 27 ODs right now, which is good, about the same as last year. We're still doing programs out there every week. We're lined up. We're lined up again today. Eric's going to do it for me. We're also going to produce a new format over here on some of the problems that we're having in the county. I'm going to announce and let you know what activities are instead of announcing 27 overdoses and stuff like that. I'll be able to give you a little bit more updated information. Other than that, we're still, Mr. Chairman, we're still under budget, hanging in there, and that's a positive for us.
Mr. Lear with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you mentioned your report in terms of...
Oh, hang on. Pull the mic either closer or I've got...
Sorry. You mentioned vehicle fatalities, and I just started to realize the numbers you're using and the numbers of sheriffs don't seem to match completely. Maybe it's because you've got different categories.
I can answer that. I usually possibly might have forgotten. I always announce that our numbers are not going to be like the sheriff's because a lot of the fatalities are flowing up north and they die in Chicago area or in the Will County area. It doesn't come into our statistics wise.
Okay, thank you.
That can happen. That's why we get together with the sheriff and give him our figures where we're at. But that's a good question, and thanks for asking that. Other than that, that's it. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Mr. Snipes?
Just,
You didn't ask Mr. Rowe that.
I'll catch him next time. You have the health department, I guess, and see salary reimbursement there in your office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Off the grant?
Oh, okay. For the thing, and then the life insurance, they have a FOIA for $75. What did you just FOIA?
Right, correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sometimes I'm thinking when we do FOIAs, we just do them, but in this case, I just happened to saw that there was a $75. Looked like they're getting a wealth of information or something. Want to make sure that they're dead or something.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right. I want to thank everybody that I got prayers from my wife. She'll be released today.
That's good. Thanks, Bob. Any old business to come before the committee? Any old business? Any new business? Any new business to come before the committee? Take a motion to adjourn. Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Fairfield. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.